With a 20-year reputation for clean business, Matt Glynn at Code Property Group is the first choice for real estate on the Sunshine Coast and surrounding areas. I've known Matt for a very long time from a personal level and professional level, and he is an excellent real estate agent. He's professional, he holds a high level of integrity, he presents incredibly well, and has a huge amount of knowledge when it comes to the real estate industry. So if you are in the market to buy, sell, or simply get a valuation and find out more about your current property, then give Matt a call on 0404 315 066 or matt.glynn, Glynn, at codepg.com. You won't be disappointed. All right, Mr. Richard Collins is back. Welcome, brother. How you going?
Good, man. How you doing?
I'm very
Appreciate
well,
you
mate. I'm
coming in.
very well. You're still in Perth, hey? Because I know you've obviously shut down. We're just talking. You shut down your face-to-face operation, but you haven't
Mm.
moved or relocated or anything like that, hey?
No, still in Perth, man. Still
You're
just
still in
down the
Perth.
road from where the facility was.
Ah, cool. Okay, very good. We'll touch on your coaching academy soon, but I thought it'd be another good opportunity because we've obviously had a chat previously in a previous episode. And look, we could talk for hours because obviously, common interest in the same industry and stuff. But you put up some quotes recently. I thought we'd have another chat. So, um, the first one I wanted to touch on was your quote about whether people know how to train hard enough. Now, I'm paraphrasing here because I've sort of grabbed it and haven't actually copied it word for word, but it is in coaching, it is very common that people that particularly new come to you and they don't realize the level of training, the intensity of the training that has to come along with changing their physique, whether they want to pursue bodybuilding or not, just body recomp in general. The effort required is often not known. So do you want to elaborate on that a little bit more, particularly where that quote came from? Was it a conversation with someone, or did you just is it something that just came up in general chit
It
chat?
was just me watching.
Oh, okay, yep.
So, yeah, it might have been just I had a few check-in videos where the reps in reserve was a little further away than I wanted it, and it sort of prompted me to say it could have been. Yeah, who knows with me these days. But yeah, look, I think it's one of the it's such a funny thing, right? Because like when you get, especially with beginners, when you get beginners coming in and they can pretty well get results with anything.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes like what may end up happening is you'll get people that are coming into the gym and they're training at, what we would consider a very low intensity, but they're seeing results because it's just a stimulus that they've never had applied to their body. And I think what happens pretty commonly is we start, from the newer point of view, is people just sort of stay with that intensity because it previously worked.
Yes.
And it just kind of works up until a point, and then they sort of struggle to get anywhere. And then they start looking at, um, you know, maybe I'm not eating enough. Maybe I need to do something different, like dieting wise, or I need to look at for a better program or something like that. And a lot of the time, like we look at, and I use this example all the time, is like we look at powerlifters or strongmen that are absolutely enormous people, like super muscular people. And, if we were to take their programming and put it into a bodybuilding world, it wouldn't be what we would look like as the most optimal training program. But because their sports are designed to be getting stronger, there's such a strong correlation between hypertrophy and strength training that, they're growing on what we would consider to be the least optimal, probably training programs for bodybuilders or for hypertrophy. But the denominator is they train with progressive overload because that's what their sport is, to get stronger.
Yep.
Whereas in bodybuilding, we're starting to look now, and it's for a lot of people, it's kind of like that forgotten art of still treating it like it's hypertrophy is still a form of strength training. And so like with that post, it was just a lot of, seeing, people or clients or whatnot, and it's getting so dialed in on, one percenters that they're missing the big rocks of training, which is getting stronger over time. And then, in order to get stronger, you have to obviously push your body relatively close to, failure.
Mm,
So, so for me, it was just like that little reminder where it's like, if powerlifters and strongmen are getting, jacked off the least optimal training programs, is the problem really the training program?
mm.
Have a really good hypertrophy based training program, or is it that we're not applying enough stimulus to it? So it was just sort of like a little quick shot reminder that it's like, even though it's, hypertrophy and everything that we go through, like it's still strength training and we still have to train to get stronger, to get better.
Absolutely. Um, it's a good point you raised because you're right. Like a new person to the gym, that new stimulus, then they'll see results pretty quickly. But then over time, obviously, body adapts, their mind adapts. They think their intensity is still adequate. So, you mentioned obviously you change your program. Maybe it's your diet often, and sometimes, and you probably experience this if people change coaches as well, right?
Mm,
They'll think that they need someone else, or someone who's getting bigger results on social media might be the way to go, but often
mm.
it is the individual. So, how do you go about having that conversation? Firstly, and secondly, how do you identify how they can get that little bit extra, that 1%er, as you mentioned?
To get stronger,
Yeah,
train at a higher intensity. Yeah, look, I think, it comes down to when I look at training, uh, Dr. Mike Israetel and both Coach Cass use this same analogy for training intensity that I find really effective for people is that we want to look at the last 3 reps to
mm,
be slower on the concentric. So like the hard part of the rep should be slower, um, without it trying to be slower.
okay, yeah,
As we're pushing as hard as possible, that the rep speed should significantly slow down. And if you can have 3 reps there where you're trying to push as hard as possible and the concentric or the hard part of the rep is significantly slower with good form,
mm,
then you're probably going to be in the right sort of area for it.
mm, absolutely,
So, so that's sort of where we look at it. And when we sort of like going about talking to clients with it, it's, essentially just using that analogy or just explaining that to them and just sort of saying like, look, we need to remember that this is still strength training. And if you're finishing your set and your first and your 10th rep look exactly the same, there's a very good chance that we're not actually hitting the right intensity. And then you can sort of say to them and be like, look, we can put you into a slight surplus, but if we're not putting the stimulus on the body to grow muscle, then we're just gaining fat.
yeah,
So essentially, and then to a bodybuilder, if you really want to scare the hell out of a bodybuilder, you can explain that to them and then say, like, look, if you might hit all the weight like rate of gain that we need, but if you're not training at this high enough intensity and you're just gaining fat, when you diet back down, you're going to lose a little bit of muscle dieting, and there's a very good chance you're going to come back worse.
yeah,
Like not the same, but actually worse because you've spent more time dieting and losing muscle without gaining any. So it's so vital, and that usually scares the hell out of bodybuilders. With general population individuals, you generally look at it and when you can explain it to that, because a lot of them just don't understand.
yeah,
Um, One thing that you can do is, failure has been demonized in the last couple of years because it's
good
not
point.
essential. Yeah. And just because it's not essential doesn't mean it doesn't have benefit.
Yep,
So I do like in periods of time to tell athletes like take this set to absolute failure.
yep,
And
okay,
maybe do 1 or 2 exercises a week and then just sort of, and that will give you like, okay, that's if you were training what you think is 1 rep in reserve and you get to 10 reps, then I tell you to go to failure and you get to 16.
There's
You know what I mean? And it's like, okay,
RPE4.
yeah. And it's like, all right, we need to either increase load here to get a lower rep range, or you don't stop until you're hitting 15 on this block.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right.
So yeah, so a couple sort of things that you can have a look at there and do it. So I'm also a big fan of using, training to failure, to determine higher intensities.
Yep.
And and look, I mean, I spoke about this with Tom Stanley the other day. I will give people 0 reps in reserve on their programs because their 0 reps in reserve, or what they perceive it as, is probably 2 reps in reserve in reality.
Yep.
So if I'm saying 1 to 2 reps in reserve, they may actually be training at 4 to 5. Whereas if I say 0, they may be training at 1 to 2. So little bit unconventional, but we got to do what we got to do to get a result,
Well,
especially if it's
that's
online clients and we don't have access to training with them.
yes, 100%, and that's obviously a big difference, right? The online space doesn't allow for that I guess intimate assessment of their ability and their body language as they're performing it. But that's often the case. You prescribe an RPE 8 with 2 reps in reserve, and I'll often, well, not often, but every now and then I'll get a question from someone who's relatively new, and they'll say, "Look, do you mind if I push to failure?" And I'm thinking. An RPE 8 is actually pretty damn hard, particularly on like a leg press as an example. So you should be feeling it, So then you've got to obviously have that conversation. So it is common practice, though, but people don't realize where failure sits and where their limitations lie, right?
Sometimes you just got to reverse engineer it and
Yeah.
do a failure and then say, all right, now we pull back 1 rep. Like, were you dying on that second last rep? Yep, cool. That's where we need to be at.
It's also probably the fear of failure too, I suppose, and just that human design element of not knowing, you know, you're not going to die, as you said. You're not going to, catastrophically have an injury or anything like that. Your body can sustain a lot of stimulus, but you've got to get there first, and often it's the mind that has to overcome that, right?
Oh, 100%.
Yep.
Absolutely. I think, and that's a big case for a lot of people.
Yep.
It's, they're, again, that's like their perception.
Yep.
It's like, what is failure? And it's like, oh, I can't do any more than this. I'm like, if someone had a gun to your head right now, you would get told. You know what I mean?
I've heard that
Far-fetched
analogy
example.
before. It's good.
Far-fetched example, I know, but
Hey, look, you would do it in that situation. You would
yeah,
absolutely
you
do it.
would.
So,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
so moving on to one of the other quotes I grabbed off your socials the other day, and that is the off season. So this is kind of relevant to what we were just talking about, where competitors they'll do really well. They'll be hyper focused in a prep. You give them okay, we're starting this day pre-prep phase into prep. We're competing at X season X shows or whatever, and they're hyper focused. Don't miss a beat. Gram to the gram. Everything's measured to the gram. Their training's obviously really, really good. But then the off season comes around and even though they've got ambitions to go again and do even better last time, maybe they want to pursue a national title, pro card, whatever. Their off season just doesn't produce what they want. And you just gave an example where they may even come back looking worse simply because they haven't done what they needed to do in terms of that training. So what's your advice around that? But also, deliverables in terms of making sure that off season is productive.
Yeah, it's such a funny one because there's so many different directions that can be like taken from. And I think on one side of the coin, there are a lot of people that maybe aren't habitually bodybuilders.
Yep.
So, when you're in a prep, you have a sense of urgency because you
Mm,
don't want to get on stage with all of your family and friends watching you and other competitors and look out of shape. So, there is that sense of urgency that makes people push.
yep.
So you can actually sort of see what people are capable of during their prep. Now, in the off season, obviously, it's a much longer time. We can get away with maybe smaller things here and there. But what we don't realize is like this sport is about hitting your full potential.
Yep.
Um, so when we're looking from an athlete point of view, I think well, from a coach's point of view to an athlete, we need to be really good with goal setting
Mm,
because I think there's a lot of the coaching industry where the coaches become the same thing, where there's a sense of urgency within the prep. They're super dialed in on, everything every week. And then when the off season comes, it's almost like, oh, it's a breath of fresh air now because that's done. Um, so, I think when you collectively, the client and the athletes set goals together and have not just long-term goals, but short-term goals, then it creates that sense of urgency again. So we might be looking at like I use for an example in the with mentoring stuff is like, I might build a phasing chart for 18 months. And I'll tell them this is not going to be 100%, but this is a rough idea.
yep.
But we might have month to month goals.
Mm,
So rather than just saying, oh, we need to grow, what is our rate of gain? What exercises are we looking at really trying to get stronger on? And then, setting up goals that are month to month. And we can be flexible with it, but we're still creating that sense of urgency for the client and we're making sure that they have the education and understanding around like you know if you fuck around and train at 5 reps in reserve for months on end, you do have that possibility that you're going to come back worse.
Mm.
Um, so making sure that they have that education around how it all works and what it does, and then also setting goals for them, which creates that sense of urgency for them so that they can, need to push themselves in a similar manner that they do within the prep. Because I think that's where a lot of the coaches will fall off is just, again, like I said, just like, okay, we've got ages now. And it's like, we need to make sure as coaches that we're staying on top of the client, that they're getting stronger, that they're improving, that if certain exercises are plateauing, that we're making adjustments on the fly that we need to, not just looking at scale weight.
Yep.
And then from a coach's point of view, again, I think it is literally that sense of urgency that, and then habits. If I put up one post, I don't know if you'll go through this one today. It's always a big one, which is like, before you're a competitive bodybuilder, you need to learn how to be a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
Um,
Good
and I
point.
think, the athletes that go into preps without having the proper lifestyle of bodybuilding for an extended period of time tend to be able to prep off motivation.
Yes.
But when everyone's clapping for you and it's exciting, it's easy to perform at a higher level
Mm.
uh, mentally. Whereas when you go into the off season and you don't have all those eyes on you, and you don't have, you know, um,
All the accolade.
yeah, you're not getting on, and people aren't telling you how good you look and stuff like that, which is things that usually come with prep.
Mm.
Then it becomes a little bit harder to stay at that high level of performance.
Yep.
And I think, athletes that don't have the habits of being a bodybuilder tend to sink it back down to where they were previously after the bodybuilding show. And I think that's a big problem too. And I don't think that's a problem in regards to like, um, you need to get that set up before they prep the first time.
Mm.
Like, don't put people into competitive like preps until they've learned how to live like a bodybuilder,
Yep.
because it's very hard to teach them after, like, hindsight's 2020, but it's very hard to teach them afterwards, how to be a bodybuilder compared to beforehand, before they're going into the prep, because then they're going back into familiar territory when they're vulnerable. Whereas you don't want to have to give them a brand new environment straight after, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah, well, it's habitual, right? It's very repetitive. It's habitual. You rely heavily on your habits, prep or no prep.
Kind
Um,
of boring.
yeah. Um, but I guess the off season, because to be, particularly as a natural athlete, to be productive in an off season, you need time. It's as simple as that. You're not going to potentially turn around from a top five place into a pro card in 6 months. You probably need 2 years minimum. But unfortunately, we're in the society of instant gratification. We want immediate results, so that sort of works mentally against us. But um, I guess, as you've indicated, you've got to have structure. So if there's structure in the off season, if there's a plan, if there's a timeline, if there's phases, periodization in regards to, cuts and weight gains and all these sorts of things, I guess that gives them more of a timeline, more of goals, therefore more structure to adhere to.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just, it becomes more fun for them as well when
Yep.
they have, and you can, I'm sure you can, say the same thing, like when you're training and, even if there's a show way down the track, like if you're trying to go from 180 to 200 kilo deadlifts, training starts becoming more fun. So it's about aligning what's going to help you be a better bodybuilder
Mm.
with the enjoyment, and just trying to match, like, the goals of bodybuilding versus the goals of, what it takes to be a good bodybuilder, and just trying to find ways to align them to create excitement so that we can have them, training at their full potential all year long. And I
Mm.
think that's something that I've learned a lot with coaching, and even just looking in sport. And it's like, a lot of the players that get to elite levels in football, basketball, soccer, whatever it is, they love that sport. They've played it for 20 years. So like when they're in their off season, they're just having fun.
Yeah.
And that's the similar sort of structure that you want to get people that do bodybuilding, is like, not just having fun in the dieting phase where you're going to get on stage, but enjoying the process of being a bodybuilder in the off season as well. And I think when you can get that habitually, when you can get them to find an element of joy in doing it, you see them excel at a very, very quick rate.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good point. Have you ever had an experience where you've just had to have that conversation and say, look, I just don't think this sport is for you because of maybe the resistance to the lifestyle, the repetitive nature of it, the food, the potential weight that you have to carry in order to be strong and off that sort of situation.
Yes, 100%. For me, it's more. I probably word it a little differently, and I'm just going to expose myself to some of my clients right now. Yeah, we won't clip this one for a reel. But I think for a lot of people, rather than telling them like this sport's not for you, I may look at it in a regards and say, look, hey, look, like let's put the preparation phase on the back
Mm.
burner for a while, and we're going to learn how to enjoy being a bodybuilder.
Yep.
And then we're going to kind of strip it back to basics and look at habits and, try to create daily habits for them to get them enjoying the process a little bit more.
Absolutely.
And then, once we can sort of start building on that, then look at the specifics of, going back into the competitive side of the sport. So
Yeah.
that's generally how I would do it. I have had many people that just from I'll tell them that the sport's not for them because their mindset towards it is just inaccurate
Yep.
in the sense of they're doing it for the wrong reasons. It's
Mm.
I want to do every single season. I don't care if I just I'm they're looking for the gratification and the attention that they're getting of photos being on stage and wanting that sort of attention. And it's like there's healthier ways that you can get that. Like you can do a photo shoot where things like
Absolutely.
that. Yeah, and I when I say this, sometimes this gets met with backlash, but like for me, it's like I don't mean this in a negative way either. Like, bodybuilding as a sport is it takes a certain personality.
Mm.
And if you don't have that personality, it's hard to do and it's not enjoyable. And there are other ways that you can be around it and still hit the same goals of what you want to get out of it without physically getting on stage or potentially like putting your health at risk. And and there's nothing wrong with that.
Mm.
I don't think that there's nothing wrong with not doing it. There's nothing wrong with that sort of situation. But I will have conversations with the people and be like, look, let's maybe look at photo shoots.
Yep.
Uh,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, that's at the end of the day, like you said, if they're looking for that accolade, or maybe they want some social media exposure or whatever, the photo shoot's just as good, if not potentially better as well.
I agree.
It gives a lifestyle aspect rather than on stage lean condition aspect. But you're right, like it's definitely not a sport for everyone, purely for the yes, it's freaking hard, right? We know that it's ridiculously hard. Like I've got clients that are 2 weeks out now, and they're struggling, but
Mhm.
that's a good thing from a coaching perspective because we know we need them to be in that place before they start to obviously fill out and get ready. But it is a challenging sport, so you've got to do it for the right reasons. Like any sport, you've got to buy into the process. You've got to understand what's required to get to the top, or at least be extremely competitive. Otherwise, why are you doing it? What is the reason for it? If you're just trying to lose weight, if you're just trying to, boost your social media, it's a damn hard way to do that. That's
Mhm. And like I always say this to clients as well, is like, I'll use myself as an example.
mm,
I love bodybuilding for
yep,
sure. Competitive bodybuilding is just not something that I'm personally interested in doing for myself.
sure,
I'm fascinated by changing body composition. I'm fascinated by the sport. I watch the sport very closely. I just, from a personal level, it's not something that, I love training for hypertrophy. I love manipulating my own body composition. I
mm,
just, the actual sports side of it is just not something that I personally uh, have a high regard to do.
yep,
So, when I say that, it's like it's not looking at it to people as like a failure. It's just, I don't think that for me, I have values that would bodybuilding would clash with it.
mm,
So I don't. It's I'm in the same boat as a lot of these people, and I don't. I'm not saying it is a negative thing by any means. It's just, for me, I will still live like a bodybuilder,
yep.
but I'm not going to do the competitive side of bodybuilding, which for a lot of competitors, they don't want to live like a bodybuilder, but they want to do the competitive side, if that makes sense.
It's a bit of a
Yeah. So like,
100%.
it's again, I don't say these things in a negative manner. Like
No.
I'm not telling somebody you're not, I'm not challenging you. I've had people say that to me before. They're like, oh, that sounds like a challenge. I'll show you. And I'm like, I'm on your team. Like I'm trying to help you, right? And like I'm not saying you're not going to do it. I'm just saying we need to live like a bodybuilder before we look at doing these things.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
absolutely.
not challenging you. This is not
No,
a challenge. Please don't take it as it's yeah. Um, but yeah, it's an interesting topic
it
because
is.
it's one of the few sports in the world where this happens.
Yeah, it is actually. It's such a unique sport from that perspective. You know, where ironically in season, off season is so contrasting in terms of performance and outcomes, and can deliver a win or a failure based on how productive you are. Yet, when you're most productive or when you're meant to be most productive is when you don't get anywhere near as much accolades. So, yeah, a lot of people struggle with that concept.
Yeah, it's fun.
It is fun. That's why we do it,
Yes.
right? So rolling into coaching, one of your quotes was about what a good coach is responsible for. Obviously, we've spoken at length this morning about the athlete's responsibility in terms of a prep off season, training hard enough, these sorts of things. But a lot of that direction and guidance comes from the coach. But there is a fine line between the coach's responsibility and then obviously the athlete, performing and delivering on the deliverables that are given to them. So, in your opinion, what's a good coach completely responsible for in terms of the bodybuilder and their journey?
From a bodybuilding perspective,
Yes.
uh, for me, a coach, like the essentially like the definition to coaching is getting somebody from point A to point B when they can't get themselves there.
Yep.
So the coach's responsibility is to make the most efficient plan to allow a client to get where they need to get to.
Mm.
I mean, I think one of the most popular Instagram posts I ever did was the GPS one, where it was, a coach is a GPS for you. You still have to drive the car.
Yep.
So I think it's so funny because for me, like coaching will go beyond that, but in a slightly different way, because what we're looking at here is saying, yes, it's our job to give you the most efficient plan to get there. But that can be taken in a way of saying, like, here's your plan, see you later. So I
Yeah.
think we need to go more in depth into that. So what we need to do is be able to remove roadblocks for clients, and then be there with them to make sure that they're making all of the right turns. They're driving at the right speed limits. You have to be the passenger in that car that's essentially like the driving teacher. You've got your own set of brakes where you can stop them if they need to, or,
Mm.
make them go quicker, whatever it might be. So I think from a coach's point of view, it's our job to remove any roadblock that we possibly can, identify roadblocks that maybe they haven't seen yet, and
Yep.
then try to get them to what they need to get to in the most efficient way possible. But do it in a way that is going to allow them to enjoy it and want to continue, which I think is a big responsibility on the coach.
Mm.
Because you do see a lot of people that sort of, well, a quote that I always sort of use, we always sort of use is in sport is like when you're coaching. I always coach amateur bodybuilders the same way. I look at them the same way I look at junior sports athletes, like younger kids, because they're new to the sport and they're still learning.
Mm.
And I might say, like, for a junior athlete in sport, winning a grand final in under 10s doesn't really matter.
Mm.
Going undefeated doesn't really matter in the big scheme of things. What matters is that they have fun and they come back and do it again and
Yep.
they play the next season. That's what's important. And I think from a coach's point of view in bodybuilding, it's the same sort of thing. It's like coaches have the onus on them to make sure that their athlete is not only getting to where they need to get to goal wise, but also you're keeping them in the sport. You're keeping them having fun. You're creating a positive reinforcement with the sport because that sort of covers that basis where, it's here's your training program, here's your diet. If you don't do it, you don't want it hard. You don't want it enough,
Mm.
sort of thing. Which sadly, in a round, not that direct, but in a roundabout way, that happens quite a lot
Yeah,
still
it
in
does.
coaching.
Yep.
So I think that, that often the area missed besides that getting from point A to point B is making sure that they come back and they want to do it again.
Mm.
And I think if you can manage both sides of that, then you fulfilled your job as a coach.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's almost creating the bodybuilding or just the sport economy as well. Like if someone has a poor experience due to whatever reason and they don't decide to come back, then that's an athlete lost to the sport potentially forever, and that does happen. We do see that from time to time where they've had a poor
Regularly.
experience, whether it's been the individual's fault, the coach's fault, combination of the two, not too sure, but we want people to continually thrive in this sport and come back and, because like we spoke about earlier, the off season's so long, so you might not see an athlete for another 2 or 3 years so that cyclic approach needs to be sustained, and it does for a lot of that responsibility falls on the coach to ensure that the athlete has an enjoyable and memorable experience as well, right?
Absolutely. And a lot of amateur athletes and first timers don't understand what good coaching and bad coaching is.
Mm,
And, if you're in that situation where you're just sort of, not being there for the client, that they don't know any better. So what's going to end up happening is they're going to attack, oh, this is what the sport is.
yes. Yep.
And then, rather than hate on the coach or, say, I need to have a better experience. I'm going to find somebody different to continue to do the sport because I love the sport. They just start hating on the sport,
Yep.
which
Yep.
is what you don't want. And, to dig it into a deeper level, and this is like a really cool area that I like to look at and explain to coaches and mentoring, is, bodybuilding outside of the contest preparation
Mm,
is one of the healthiest things you can do, natural bodybuilding.
yeah.
You know, building muscle has so much to do with heart health, longevity, slowing of degeneration, and things like that. And it's like, we should be not just, if we're spending 2 to 3 years in an off season versus a 25-week prep,
Mm,
that person is going to be significantly healthier than somebody that's just a casual going into the gym here and there and doing whatever. So, the onus on the client is like it's so important to try to keep them, getting better in the off seasons because from a health point of view, like a lot of people like to demonize bodybuilding from a health point of view, but you only need to like I can understand the prep,
mm,
but that's probably 20% of what bodybuilding athletes spend in their prep. So like you're actually creating healthier people in these off seasons, and coaches need to remember that, and remember the importance of not just the stage, but what they're doing for that individual over a long period of time, because they're creating that healthy reinforcement with, if they're enjoying the off season, they're going to live longer.
yeah.
So it
Oh,
becomes a really important thing there that athletes need to, or coaches need to remember that, you have, these are things that are going through the athlete's head. And these are responsibilities that a coach has to create that positive reinforcement with training and exercise for these athletes for a lifetime, even if you don't train them for a lifetime, but that's what you're creating with them. So it is a really, really important thing to look at as a coach's responsibility.
yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with that more. I really like that aspect of it, and it is often overlooked. The fact that you are um, influencing their longevity, their heart health, their bone density, their ability to eat more food, metabolize more food. Like it all comes back to getting stronger and putting on more lean mass. And you're right, it does get demonized a lot, but that I guess that comes from oh, well, there's a number of areas it comes from, probably, old school thinking, as well as, you hear all the stories and potentially the enhanced side of things. And like, there's a lot to discuss in that little space, but you're
There's a
right.
whole podcast on
Yeah,
itself.
it's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
It is, but you're right. It's, yes, the prep itself, if done correctly, can still be done, under healthy conditions is probably a good way to put it. Even
You're not
though
going to die. You're not going to have
no, you're
long-term
not.
effects.
No, no, no. Exactly. But the off season, man, you've got the ability to change your physique and add years to your life, and like that there on its own should be very motivating. As an element, rather than just having to get pep talks and look at phases and all this sort of stuff. You get to walk into the gym and have the privilege of changing your life. It's pretty cool.
From
Um,
a coach's point of view, just that last point on this, and this is my like punch in the face that I always say to this, is
yep.
like if you're a coach and that doesn't that train of thought doesn't motivate you to put more effort into your clients in the off season, then at the end of the day, like you're coaching for the wrong reasons. You
Yeah,
shouldn't be,
good
because
point.
that is at the core of what coaches do in the fitness realm. It's promotion of healthy movements. It's promotion of, being a healthier person, being a more active person, disease prevention, all of these sort of
Yeah.
things. Um, and if that doesn't motivate you to try to be better coaching that off season, then you just shouldn't be a coach.
Mm,
Like plain and simple. Like it's find a different job because you're gonna make the industry look worse.
yeah,
And, that's
100%.
what we don't want. So yeah.
Good point. You mentioned obviously, and this is just an add-on, the first timer experience, and they won't know or aren't aware of the potential of poor coaching that they're receiving simply because they just simply do not know. What are some red flags that you would recommend to look for from an athlete or even just a general population person that is looking to get coaching but wants to go down the right path with the right coach so that they do obviously achieve progression and achieve the results that they're looking for.
Red flags in coaching
Yeah,
for
yeah.
yeah. Okay. Oh, all right. Where do we start? I got a book on this somewhere, actually. Um, I think things like getting to know the athlete are really important. Like, I think
Mm,
that's a green flag. But mostly, like, when we're having a here you go, see you later sort of situation without trying to understand the context of the individual, I think that's to me is the initial sort of big red flag. And again, some people's onboarding is just not quite as maybe detailed, and it's not necessarily like a make or break,
mm,
but that could be a potential to look at there. Um, Rushing people, like I have this thing where it's like what do they call it these days? An ick. Yeah. It's like yeah, I'm trying to get, you got to be relatable as a coach, right?
yeah,
Like
you do. That's
trying to
right.
get the young lingo going. But like one of the things is like people that aren't bodybuilders that enjoy going to the gym that are genetically good. If a coach is pushing you to be a competitive bodybuilder without the athlete having like an interest in it,
Mm,
like that's a big red flag for me
yep.
because that's literally just showing it's like, okay, they've just seen potential as you're marketing for them.
Mm,
Like if that person has no desire to do it or has never even considered it, and you're saying, you know what you should do? You should do this and I'll coach you. Um, that's, what do they say? Like if something's free, then that person becomes the marketing. Like that
yeah.
person is the product that's being sold. It's sort of the same in that. And it's like, okay, you're not looking at this person trying to help them achieve their goals. You're there trying to use them to help achieve your goals.
Mm,
And I'm not a massive fan. I think to me that's a relatively big red flag
yep.
where we can, and that's a quick way to kind of see where that goes. Rushing people to get on stage, I think, is another one that's a
Mm,
little bit of a red flag for me. I think it's different if the client sort of says, "Hey, I'm going away, or I want to have kids, and this is the only time I can really do it." That's you helping them get to their goal. But like when you're trying to rush people to the stage, I think for a win or
yeah.
something like that, or it's there's not many people competing this season. We should definitely do it this
Mm,
season. XYZ is doing next season, so we don't want to do that. You know what I mean? So like I think those sort of things are red flags. Um, but yeah, I think that's probably the main ones. Um, but yeah, I just kind of the pushing people into bodybuilding, I think is a really shit thing to do.
mm,
And I'm all for it for bodybuilding and people wanting to do it. But I think when you try to push somebody into it, that's to me is probably my number one biggest red flag, I would say, from a starting point from an
yep.
amateur.
So no sliding into their DMs to.
What about you? What do you think? What do you think is a big red flag?
Oh, look, you've hit the nail on the head with those ones. I think rushing someone when they're potentially not ready, for starters. Look, it's only going to do you a disservice as a coach, let alone them as an athlete, because then they may not perform as well, they may not look as good as you would have expected, and then that falls back on you, right? At the end of the day, your reputation is on stage every single time you put someone up there. So I always say that. I always say to my guys, I would never put anyone on stage who isn't ready, simply because firstly, it's not good for them and their mental health, and secondly, it's not good for my reputation, which obviously I've worked really hard to build. So I think that's a red flag. I'm I really dislike the industry from the poaching perspective that happens, and this is it's kind of relevant, but it's not. If you're getting approached directly by another coach when you've got a coach already who is, potentially doing you a good service, but then reconsiders your position. I think that's more on the coach that's approaching you as well. I just don't like that. I think it's using your word, ick.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if you've ever had that happen, but it does
Oh,
happen.
many times. Yeah,
Yeah,
many times. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It's just,
It's
and most people like it. And we go back to the original point you raised about, building that strong relationship with someone and understanding them from the ground up. If you've got that good, strong relationship, then something like that shouldn't be an issue. It won't come in between you and your client, but it happens more often than we like. And it's, again, it's about coaches trying to market themselves with good athletes, and in general. But we
they
market.
want the athletes to be the product to make themselves look.
Yeah, I know, and I just don't like that at all.
Coaching, and it's such a funny like, and just being around other sports, like it's such a funny thing in bodybuilding because like a lot of people, it's oh, this person's paying more attention to me.
Mm,
I'm gonna go there,
yeah,
or something like that. And it's like, yeah, but generally what happens is once they get them in, it stops.
they become a number.
Yeah, and it's just like it's such a because you run that funny line where it's like if you're doing a great job and somebody's able to be poached, like, you know, do you want them as a client?
It's a good point. Yeah,
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 and
yeah.
it's wrong on a yeah. It's just
Mm.
the whole thing's a little bit messy. I think that's a really good point as well that you
Yeah.
make
I'm just not
about
a
that.
fan of that, but also the coach hopping as well. I know people will do that season to season. They'll roll into another coaching person, another coach or another coaching team or whatever. I'm a firm believer, particularly if you start with a first timer and you work from the ground up, you get them going, you invest in them, they invest in you, you get them to a certain level, they buy into the process. You want to see that it might take 10 years before they potentially get to the top of the tree. But that's really satisfying from a coaching perspective to have experienced that journey, which I'm sure you can attest to. But going from coach to coach because you think the grass is greener isn't often the case. And the bodybuilding industry is a big industry, but it's a small industry. So we all know each other. So you tend to get wind of what's going on, and that just leaves a sour taste in my mouth. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also it's just like from a deeper psychological level of that, it's athletes passing blame
Mm,
to everything other than themselves
mm.
sometimes.
Yep. Yeah,
And it
you.
just comes down to, well, it's not me, it's my coach's fault.
Mm.
To the next one. Well, it's not me, it's my coach's fault. And sort of jump to the next one. And it's
Yeah.
like, sometimes you got to say it to athletes and just be, and I've done that. I've had somebody, leave where, I was a little bit younger, maybe a little bit less patient. But I sort of said that. And it was like, look, like, maybe you will work better with XYZ coach. And
Mm.
if it is, that's amazing. But
Yep.
at the same time, like your attitude towards the sport and your work ethic,
Mm.
the best coaches in the world aren't going to be able to train that for you.
Yep.
You need to make sure that you can get on top of that yourself,
Mm.
or otherwise nothing is going to work. So, and I think that it can be a big downfall in athletes over long-term progression is,
Yes.
not learning how to, uh, coaches as well, like learning how to take on blame and, not just blame everybody else around you to get justification of why you're not doing as well as you think you could be.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, that's a good point. And
For
I
coaches
think
too. I'm not just calling out athletes. That's
no,
fucking coaches as well.
no, no, no,
Yeah.
no, 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 we're
Yeah.
not. But that's a good caveat to that. To you just raised that about the fact that sometimes a coach and an athlete won't align, right? It might be a personality thing, it might be just a different a generational thing. So if you have to move on to find someone that you do align with and will buy into their process a little bit more, all the power to you. Absolutely. It's same in professional team sport. You might not necessarily buy into that coach's philosophy and their training style, but the next team you might. So that's I guess a different element. But when it's repetitive and it happens multiple times over a couple of year span, then that's a different story, I think. And you're right. I think the athlete potentially does need to have a look and just do an audit on themselves and make sure that they're actually performing to the levels that are required to be competitive in the space. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I don't think it'll ever change, but I guess just more,
Be aware of it.
conversation. Yeah, more awareness and more conversation about it will certainly eliminate the
I do
obvious.
have a question with you on that as well, because
Mm,
I've been looking at this a little bit deeper the last few months, and getting a little bit older,
mm,
as we all are.
mm.
Uh, I'm finding I'm struggling to coach certain demographics more than I used to.
Okay.
Have you noticed that?
I don't. I must admit, like I'm, I'm a little bit older than you, but I don't have any. I've got a couple of teenage clients, but that's just generally been through a referral. Early 20s, mid 20s, not so much anymore.
Hmm.
So yeah, I have never actually sat down and thought about it, but I think you might be
Hmm.
right. Yeah,
Yeah, because I've been looking at this recently, and I've just sort of looked at it, and I'm like, I'm getting older because I'm finding it harder to be relatable to
mm,
certain demographics,
yeah,
younger demographics, male and female.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, it's just kind of funny. I actually spoke with Scott Goble about this the other day,
mm,
uh, and he was saying the same sort of thing. And he's like, I've got a timeline on these some of these athletes because we're just apples and oranges apart from each
yeah,
other. It's like, yeah, shit, that's true, actually. And that just made me think about it, and I was like, fuck, I'm the same way.
yeah,
So yeah, it is. It's interesting. A little bit of a sidebar there, but
yeah. No,
uh,
no, no. It's
yeah, we
totally
can talk about
relatable.
that after the podcast. But it was just something that was really funny that I've been looking at the last couple months and just
Yeah.
sort of examining within my own clients.
Well, it's a good point you raise because I guess generationally, those coming through now are living through completely different times. In terms of technology and social media and just the mentality of the space. Whereas we've grown up in a slightly different generation. So yeah, the relatability of that could be challenging for some people.
You
Um,
can yell at me. I'm good. Like I'll take that. I grew up playing like high level sport.
There you go.
I'm used to that. That's
Yep.
fine. Yeah, but it's a different landscape.
It is a different
Yeah,
landscape and somewhat more of a sensitive one too. So that's a good point you raise. It really is.
just more of a not necessarily seen as like a good or a bad thing, but it's just
Yep.
more of an observation
Yep.
of
Agreed.
coaching coached in different eras, like the
Mm.
differences between. Yes, I
Yeah.
find it. Yeah, it's a fascinating topic, that one.
It is. It is. So rolling on that in terms of a segue into your coaching academy. Now you launched this only several weeks ago, and you were just telling me before we jumped on here that it's gone gangbusters. Firstly, talk about it, but secondly, why do you think so many have bought into it? Do you feel that there's a desire or a demand for further education in the coaching space, particularly around the psychology of it, the mindset of it, working with athletes, like yeah, give me your take on the situation.
I'll be honest, man. I built it, and I was like, if a few people come in here, it'll be great, and it's gone crazy. So I'm
Yeah.
still navigating it, what people want out of it,
Okay.
because I want it to be, it's a community. So I like when people are bringing in questions and things like that, that's sort of, I'm still navigating around. So like a lot of what I do is a choose your own adventure. Like I built it, and
Mm.
we're gonna solve problems
Okay.
inside
Yep.
for coaches and for athletes. Um, Originally it was built because, and I say this like it's like been around for a while, it's been up 17 days. But originally I built it because in the education space, we have so much access to information around training, diets, contests, all of these sort of things, right?
Mm.
The academy is about coaching.
Mm.
So everything I'm doing in it, while there will be aspects of bodybuilding and some X's and O's and hard skills of bodybuilding, like we're definitely going to have that in there and coaching general population, like diets, training, check it out. The actual coaching side, there's not a great deal of information out there.
No, you're right.
So what I wanted to do was create a community where we can, and focus on that.
Mm.
So I've sort of told people it's like this is helping coaches be better coaches.
Mm.
So inside it, I've got professional basketball players. I've got coaches of professional basketball teams in there. I have bodybuilders. I have general population, and everything that we go through can kind of relate back to the discipline of coaching.
Mm.
So if you're a school teacher, if you coach soccer, if you coach basketball, if you coach AFL, if you're, a player that wants to improve their, attitudes towards sport or level up from an emotional level to get better at their sport, that's what it's going to be predominantly looking at. So that was for me like, and when I looked at it and I was like, that would be amazing if somebody did that. And then when I was looking at the scope, I wanted to bring a lot of the mental performance and coaching side of things into bodybuilding
Okay.
because there's just not a lot within, there is in other sports, there's just not a lot of that within bodybuilding. And when I had to look at it, I was like, I think with my history of coaching and what I've coached with sport and bodybuilding and Gen Pop and how long I've done it, yada yada, I was like, you know what, I probably can add a lot of value into this.
Mm.
So for me, I was like, you know what, let's just build it and I'll start putting my thoughts in there. What I told myself that gave me the confidence to build it was people seem to love my black squares, which are all about coaching.
Yep.
So why don't I, rather than have just surface level sentences, why don't I take these posts and start going more in depth with them and put it into an academy, monetize it, and give people a more in-depth understanding of what I'm talking about. Um, and yeah, it's been really successful. It's
How
gotten
good.
a lot bigger than I thought it was. So it's been really so yeah, and it's like, it's really fun. Like I genuinely enjoy all of the conversations about coaching because
Yep.
I know I can bring in different disciplines.
Yep.
So like I can tell you now like how different a elite basketball player is or an elite basketball coach to a bodybuilding coach that's an elite bodybuilding coach.
Mm.
And I know how much they can help each other
Yep.
because there's things that they're going to be able to take away from each other. So for me, it's about bridging that gap
Mm.
just to try to help coaches be better. And then there's a bunch of stuff in there for tools that we might use for mental performance for football, basketball players, things like that. And then bodybuilding. It's nobody in bodybuilding looks at those things, but it's so big in the sports world,
Mm.
and it's like it would be highly beneficial for bodybuilders. So, if I can bring that in there with them, then all of a sudden, we might be able to improve the level of coaching and bodybuilding. We might be able to improve the level of adherence and, getting the most out of athletes and allowing them to hit their full potential regardless of the discipline that they're in. And that's essentially what the academy is why it's the Full Potential Academy, because it's not bodybuilding, it's not sport, it's just helping coaches and athletes and giving them practical tools and education to allow them and their clients to hit their full potential.
I like that. That's awesome. Yeah, you're right. There is a big gap. It's amazing. I've often said that there needs to be more education in the coaching space, simply because like whether you started as a personal trainer or whatever, like you get your cert 3 and 4, and then you're kind of left to your own devices, unless you want to maybe go and pursue a degree or something like that. But there's this big gap of learning that you can accomplish, but it's just not in sort of a standard academic approach. So I think you've found a niche that's probably going to continue to do really well, and hopefully, many walk away from it becoming better coaches. And I'm sure that's exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's fun to do. It's like, the communication side of coaching is massive on,
Mm.
not only adherence, but how to get the most out of people.
Yep.
And, you do that over an entire off season and you learn how to keep them driven. Your retention is gonna be better from a business point of view. Your
Yeah.
athlete results are gonna be far better from a business point of view, and all of those sort of things. And like I was just sort of saying yesterday, like one of the first live Q&As, because we're gonna do weekly Q&As in there,
Mm.
is I've actually got a professional basketball player coming on that has, makes a couple $1 million a year, and that's their job. If they get injured, they don't get paid. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Mm.
And, a pro bodybuilder. And then we're going to talk about how we approach sports.
Mm.
How do we approach professional bodybuilding? How do we approach professional sport, like in terms of recovery, in terms of mental performance, and so like it's all going to be relative, but two different disciplines.
Yep.
But it's things that every different whatever discipline you're in is going to be able to is going to be able to take things away from it and apply it to themselves. So it's that sort of stuff there that I really want to bring up because I think like you said, it's the missing link in a lot of bodybuilders. It's the missing link in a lot of coaches with struggling to get results with the clients, with struggling to get adherence with clients and all of those sort of things. And it's just not taught. Like we know so much about nutrition,
Yep.
so much on nutrition, so much on training, so much on biomechanics, all that sort of stuff. But like the actual being able to communicate that information to the client in a way that's going to keep them pushing themselves to hit their full potential
Mm.
is not there. So it's like we have the two locations, but there's no fucking bridge. So I'm trying to build a bridge.
You're building the bridge, so you're doing a good job, mate.
That's my analogy for it. I'm trying to
Yeah, I
build
like
a
that. That's
bridge
good.
between the two
It
things.
is
Yeah.
good. So Full Potential Coaching Academy. That's the name
Mm.
of it. That's the Instagram page of it. So they can
It
follow
doesn't
it.
have an Instagram page. Just
Oh, it
go
doesn't
on
have it.
my,
Okay, I've missed
yeah,
it.
yeah. Just there's a link in I share it every fucking day. So if you
Yeah,
see my
yeah.
black squares, it'll be in the caption.
It'll be in that. All right. I'll put your handle on the notes
Yeah, yeah.
anyway. Oh, awesome, man. I think we'll round up there, but that's really cool, and we'll have to do another one because, yeah, like I said at the start, we can chat all day about all this sort of stuff.
It's always the best time coming on and talking shit with you.
It's
Send me a
awesome.
message and said, let's do it. I'm like, hell yeah. We
Yeah,
got
man.
this
Yeah,
done.
yeah, yeah. Quick, drop a question. Butter naan or garlic naan? Always
See, I
thinking.
had them both, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then I learned you can combine them.
You can. Yeah, you can actually
And
up
that
like
was
you can
it. Yeah,
yeah.
that was done. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
why I gained like 4 kilos in India. It was incredible.
It was a naan bread diet.
Oh, that was it. It was butter chicken and naan bread.
Yeah, 100%.
Incredible.
There's a good
Absolutely.
off season.
I still right now I'm telling people like someone will be like, oh, I got Indian for dinner. I'm like, you got to go to India.
I was going to say, like, how's your perception of Indian food in Australia now compared to what it was in India, right? It's
Oh my God. Yeah, what was
yeah.
the chicken thing that I kept getting as well, the with the number? That was
Oh, chicken
incredible.
69.
Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah.
wasn't
Yeah, Darren still
69.
orders that
It was a
heaps, so
different number. I
yeah.
kept calling it chicken 69. It was a different number, wasn't it?
Oh, maybe it was
I just
65.
accidentally
Maybe it was
called it
65.
69 because I'm immature as hell. But
Yeah,
the number chicken, that was,
yeah,
oh my
yeah. I've had it since. But yeah, I didn't even know about it until he
Oh
told
my
you,
God.
and then yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
dynamite.
When I said it. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
I'll
India.
order a plate when I'm over there next week and send you a photo.
Oh, you make me so angry.
Oh, awesome, man. Hey, look, we'll finish. Obviously, you've been on before, so I've asked you the personality question previously, but this time, for repeat guests, fight song. So if you're a fighter, you're walking
Hmm?
out to the ring, what is the song that you're going to put on that's just going to get you pumped up so you can pummel the shit out of your opposition?
Well, you know, I'm a wrestling guy, right? So,
Yes,
yeah,
yes. Yeah, how good was SummerSlam too, by the way? I watched that. It
it
was awesome.
was actually, yeah,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was real good. So, you know what? Based off of that, because you said SummerSlam, I was going to go between two people, but we're
Mm.
going to have to go with Brock Lesnar's theme song now because he
Ah, he's
returned.
back.
God,
The
that
beast
song
is
is
back.
great. Yeah, and God, that song is great.
It is a
So,
good song.
yeah, we'll go with Brock Lesnar's theme song.
Yeah, cool. Unreal.
I
I'm
was thinking
partial to
about that
Cody
yesterday.
Rhodes' song myself. I like that. Just
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the engagement with the two moments where he has to, he
Mm.
gets the crowd into it. I think that's just great. It's great.
When they came to, because they come to Perth, so when they were at Perth for Elimination Chamber
Mm.
last year, and he came out and they did that the Wallow thing,
Yeah, yeah,
fireworks,
yep.
like it looks cool on TV when you see it in person.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, and the same with Randy Orton. When Randy
Oh
Orton
yeah,
comes out, yeah, there's a
yeah.
everyone pops hard for that.
It's such smart marketing, isn't it? Like even Seth Rollins' song where they're all just,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. It just engages the crowd so well.
They put on a good show. Like
Yeah, they
even if
do.
you don't like wrestling, you can go watch a wrestling show and you'll
Oh,
love it.
it's just pure entertainment. It's great value to watch. Yeah,
Yeah,
completely
just the
agree.
crowd alone will make it fun.
Yep. Awesome, my man. Well, thank you very much, mate, for your time once again. We'll
Appreciate you having me on. It's always
yeah.
fun coming.
I'll obviously put in the notes how to find you. Most people know where you are anyway, but yeah, if you're an aspiring coach, if you're an experienced coach, and you want to obviously get more out of your coaching, more out of your athletes, then jump into Richard's full potential.
I
Coach.
just changed my Instagram bio, so I can't
I
even
saw
remember.
that. Yeah, yeah. So you no
I
longer
can't even
the Z
remember.
code is no more.
No, it doesn't exist
That was the
anymore.
studio. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't exist anymore. So I don't. someone asked me this yesterday, and they're like, "What's your Instagram handle?" And I'm like, "Fuck, I don't even know." Like Richard Collins coach or something. There's an
I
underscore
think it
in there
is. Yeah,
somewhere. I don't know. Yeah,
that's it.
give me a
Well,
few weeks. I got to get used to that. It's
there
still new
you
to me.
go. Awesome, man. Well, thank you once again, and we'll have to chat soon again at some stage
Oh
for
yeah,
sure. Yeah,
excellent. Thanks for having me on, man.
pleasure, man.